What's up, everybody? Sean from InvestLive here, and we're taking a little bit of a deviance from what we normally talk about. Um, we talk a lot about stocks and investing and personal finance. I saw an article today, and I said, you know what? I need to talk about this because this is something that I'm going to go and do now, right after this video is done. And I'm going to check my credit card balances and just see what's going on because this is pretty wild. So let's not waste any time. Uh, did you know right now, and I just read this a minute ago, 1.5 million US bank cards have been hacked. And this is per NordVPN. That's pretty wild. Over 1.5 million US bank cards were found on the dark web from a recent study, according to NordVPN, who is a cybersecurity company. So I want you to think about that, right? American payment card details of 1.561 million people were found on the dark web. And you want to talk about what's crazy about that? It's not so much the volumes, it's what someone pays for that credit card. You know what it would cost to buy a stolen credit card? What do you think? $100, $50? I really wouldn't even know. A dollar, a nickel, I have no clue. It costs $5.80. Now, I started thinking about that and I'm like, okay, well, 1.5 times 5.8, it's a pretty good amount of money, but like I'm assuming they're selling them hundreds of times, right? So think about how wild that is, that people are just targeting credit cards on a regular basis. Now, there's some really interesting details here that go beyond just these basic numbers. So number one, per NordVPN and others here, it's hard to come up with the exact number because it's very fluid and it fluctuates quite a bit, okay? So just keep that in mind. But according to the FTC, there are reports that consumers in the US lose more than $3.3 billion to credit card fraud. This is up from 1.8 billion just in 2019. So this is going through the roof. And that's why it's not a joke. I'm literally going to go and check right now. And it got me thinking about the fact that we talk all the time about all of the Robinhood apps and the Weebles and the online platforms, et cetera, especially in the crypto space too. Like if you have recently signed up for an investing service across any of these kinds of platforms, you're giving them copies of your photo ID, tons of personal information. I mean, my gosh, if there's a hack, someone's going to not only get all that stuff, but probably easily combine it with the 1.5 million stolen credit cards or bank cards that are already out there. I mean, it's pretty wild, right? Now, if you're thinking to yourself, excuse me, where is it most likely that these card leaks happened, say from a state-by-state basis? And I'm reading this off of an article. Listen to this, right? I don't know how I feel about this. It seems pretty wild, but I suppose it speaks to East, West, Central, right? In the report from NordVPN, they did a breakdown. California was the worst with 88,000 stolen. Texas, second with 74,000. And Florida, 62,000. Now, one would argue, of course, they're the biggest states and have pretty sizable population, so this might make some sense. I'm not forgetting about Alaska, of course, but just, you know what I'm saying. Lots of people, lots of spending, lots of credit cards. But if we actually break this out differently, if we look at the most leaks from a standpoint of like a per capita basis, it turns from those three to Alabama, Wyoming, and Washington. So pretty interesting, actually, that like when you pull it out and look at it, it's really everybody that's getting hit here. I think that the main issue here is that some places have better security than others, of course. MasterCard was called out specifically as having a really strong centralized authentication system. So it basically has this ability to quickly ascertain if they're being brute force attacked sooner than other people. Now, what's funny, though, is to think like this is really about preventing it as it's happening and how often or quick they can identify it. So it doesn't mean that it stops everything. It just stops it potentially faster than other people. But kind of an interesting comparison. So for the reporter here or the person who went through the testing, MasterCard has a centralized authentication system, as I just said, so it can detect brute force attacks faster. You can only get away with like 10 tries with one number before MasterCard's system sees that. With Visa, they said they could easily do 30 or 40 tries, maybe even more. And depending on the time of the day, if it's super busy, they can do way more because, and I didn't know this either, Visa has a decentralized federated system. Now, just on top of all this, debit fraud is also on the rise. So in 2020, U.S. citizens lost $10.24 billion to payment card fraud compared to $9.62 billion in 2019. This is, again, per NordVPN's CTO. Wow. this is pretty wild. And it's sort of funny because the blame game is beginning here a bit of like, well, banks are saying that the users of these cards aren't taking the right levels of security on their part. The card owners are saying the banks aren't protecting them. So it's pretty interesting to think about that. And in the US, from a 2021 report from Nielsen, the US actually represents a disproportionate amount of global card fraud. As someone who lives in the US and witnesses the amount of cards getting swiped every second of the day, I don't think I'm too surprised to see that. But it's just really interesting. So let's just give you some actionable advice here, right? If you think your card might have been stolen or hacked or has someone else got access to it, the best and first thing you should really do is just call the bank or the credit card company and block the card right away. So at a minimum, you're stopping something from happening. The next thing is, if you get it turned back on, make sure you're staying on top of it and understand what exactly the risks are. I want to tell you a quick story here because this is really, it's actually kind of interesting. And I don't think I've talked about this openly. I've had a situation where I've had a couple of things get hacked now a few times. And really, when I found out how it happened, it was actually amazing. And we pursued it. So rather than just saying, whatever, cancel the card, it's all good. In one case, we actually were really determined to figure out what the hell happened. So it's a really funny story, and I'll tell it quickly here. I started noticing some weird charges. They were getting auto declined, which was weird. Like, it would get charged and then returned right away. Sometimes they wouldn't go through. Or what I was starting to really get were these weird texts of like, can you please approve this purchase for whatever? And of course I would deny. It was a total random, like, place on the other side of the country or something. Then a bunch of them went through, and they went through really quickly, like all in the same time. So I was honestly getting really tired of the fact that calling and saying no or blocking, or like even worse, having to keep changing my credit card numbers, because every time we think someone got a hold of it or guessed it or put it together, I would have to then go and update all of the places I use it. So like, think auto bill pays, subscription services, etc. Now, none of that is the end of the world, and that's certainly better than having to deal with fraudulent payments and pay them myself. But that said, that is a pain in the rear end. And kudos, by the way, to the credit card customer service folks. You guys work so hard and do a great job, and they've always been super helpful. But the most recent one, we actually had some trouble with, because they said, sir, you were physically in the store and swiped your card and signed for it. And that was really a crazy moment to think, like, someone somehow got their hands on my card. Now, I'm not an idiot. I work in analytics and data. I'm well aware of how things work. I know quite a bit about the back end of this, but seeing how easy it was is what kind of blew me away. We ended up calling the police down where the store happened, and the police led us into actually a little bit higher up than that, if you know what I'm saying. And basically I was like, look, I'm not even trying to pursue charges. I'm just trying to understand, how do I have my credit card in my pocket and someone else has it and is somehow able to go into a store repeatedly and just keep using it every day, even though I keep reporting it. And what had happened was, there was a ring that was basically like, got their hands on all the right materials. They had the proper magnetic strips. They had the cards imprinted with the right numbers, the security code on the back, which that to me was the most surprising part. It wasn't just the numbers and an expiration date. They even had the security code, and the magnetic strip was working. And this was a card just before we switched over to the chips. So, I don't think chips are really going to solve for much, if I'm being honest here, but long story short, they caught these people on camera. It was just a guy and a woman going in every day using my real, actual physical card to just buy all kinds of crap. It was crap. It wasn't even like useful stuff. It was like pool noodles in a lawn chair. I mean, like, my God, credit card fraud to get pool noodles. It's crazy. And the reason why I ultimately got caught was, I think that was the test. It was starting off with some absolute garbage. And then ultimately what happened was, then they tried to book like a major vacation, like tens of thousands of dollars. And that clearly got shut down. So long story short, turned out this was a much bigger thing. I was one of many people apparently this was happening to. But I just want to make a point that we were trying to track back to how this could have happened. And what was so interesting was how easy it was. There were actually two ways this came to be. One was, this is in the Boston area. Someone had gone to a couple of gas stations and put a magnetic fake strip reader over the gas station's current reader. It literally didn't look any different. You would never know. And here, keep in mind, like, right now is winter time. The weather's pretty bad. It's freezing and it's snowing. Like, we're expecting 2 feet of snow today. when you're filling your tank, you're like sticking the card in, pulling it out, and you're getting rocking and rolling. So they stole a lot of cards. And then they said the other one looked like there was like a bar or a restaurant or something like that. They would always say like, oh, we're just going to, bring the card right back to you, right? You pay your bill, they take the card in the back and scan it. Someone working there was literally doing more than scanning. Apparently it was either taking pictures or some other way of doing it where they're getting all that information, saving it, and then putting it into this card making sort of factory, I guess. So I'm only sharing this because you might think you're being safe because you don't put it online or no one can access it digitally. But like you go into a store and you use it and someone can easily grab it. That really sort of, nothing surprises me, but I was more surprised to think like the boldness of it and how also, for the record, how easy it was to trace it back. What scares me when I see stuff like this VPN Nord piece here talking about the dark web is like how quick and easy it is. And then looking at how easy it is to try these numbers out on a MasterCard or Visa website. Like, my gosh, you don't need a lot of information. You can take some educated guesses and probably do okay. So anyways, the tie back here that I wanted to make, assuming anyone's still watching, and I hope you are, is it pays dividends to you to go and make sure you're looking at those credit card balances, at least every so often, and make sure things on there make sense. Because the only reason I noticed this was a couple of like really weird little charges for stuff that I would never buy. And when I called to talk about it, it started to build into a bigger picture of like, wait, how many months back has a $5 or $6 thing shown up? And it could be simple stuff like, I get a coffee every day. So if I see a coffee on there, I'm not going to think to check if it was, that day, the day before, or whatever. I don't even think about it. Sometimes I get 2 or 3 or buy one for someone else or someone buys one for me. So like you can lose track really easily. So anyways, I just want to share this because I saw that report and I was thinking like, man, I wonder if folks really realize how much is out there. And I also think about the fact that like a lot of the folks who watch this channel are trading or investing in equities, in FX, in crypto, etc. So there's a lot of info out there. You got to make sure you're protecting yourself. And especially as you grow your portfolio and your wealth, and those credit card balances go up, available credit goes up rather, you're really putting yourself in a position where like you're almost more desirable to a degree to someone who wants to steal that information. So long story short, we're going into the weekend. The markets are crazy and I didn't even want to talk about them today. So hope you got some value out of this. It's making me really think I want to dig into MasterCard and Visa from an investment perspective. So that's my big highlight that I'm going to pull from this for myself. But otherwise, I hope things are good. I would love if you would share, like, has this happened to you? How did you deal with it? How long did it take, in the comments below? And if you haven't done so already, we really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button for us. So everybody, thanks so much. Hope you have a great day and good investing and be safe.